Welcome to Down and Scaled Replicas and our build of the Talos 2 class Battlestar. For years I've offered a detail set for another manufacturer's cast resin kit of the Talos concept, and I just never was overall very happy with the way that turned out. So for years and years I've been just wanting to redesign the Talos concept from the ground up and do some things with it that I really would like to have seen with the kit. So I have finally gotten around to doing that. And in this new interpretation of the Talos design concept, which I probably deserves an entirely new name, but because of the name recognition with Talos, I've just decided to call it a Talos 2 class Battlestar. You're going to see some new shapes, and you're going to see a lot of new detail on this, which modelers that like to get in there and do panel line washes and dry brushing and weathering, they're really going to be able to sink their teeth into that. You're going to not only see new shapes, but you're going to see some new features on this as well too, including a large railgun on the belly and a lot of point defense weapons on the upper spine of the ship as well. Plus, I have challenged myself for the first time to design in scale of Vipers and shuttlecraft, and I'm really happy with the way that they turned out. We're going to talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but I think that they look really cool, and I think that the modelers will enjoy having that option as well. So thank you so much for your interest in this kit and for joining us. Let's just go ahead and jump right in and see what we've got. Overall, there are probably about a dozen pieces to this kit, all 3D printed using the MSLA process. You're going to get a lot of great detail and no heavy print lines like you might get with an FDM printer. Also included is a 3D printed display base and a brass rod to mount your Talos to once you get it completed. We have a decal sheet that comes with the kit. This is going to include markings for the flight pods, for the runways on the flight pods, as well as that colonial crest that goes up on the top of the ship. There's a spot designed specifically for that decal on the top of the ship. And finally, of course, you get the Talos nameplate on the side of the flight pod with that black drop shadow effect. Every kit comes with assembly instructions, and this kit has been designed to make assembly as easy as possible, where all the parts are self-aligning and fit together as well as possible, and really to make this an enjoyable experience from the modeling point of view. I always enjoy looking at technical specifications for ships, so you're going to get a data sheet along with this pointing out some of the key features that have been designed into the kit, just sort of as a fun extra, something for you to take a look at. Hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Let's begin the assembly process. Now you're going to need to go through and find some areas that still have some remnants of the support stubs on it from the 3D printing process and get those cleaned up. This is the floor of the flight pod, for example. Sand these flat. There's a slightly raised ridge there as well too from the 3D printing process. Sand with some sandpaper on a flat surface, and it won't take you too long to clean those up at all. I would also recommend just take a brief pause here and paint the floor of the landing bays and go ahead and decal them now before you put the top of the landing bay on there, and that's going to make your life a little bit easier in terms of getting in there with those decals. Once you've got that taken care of, then it's a relatively simple assembly process. A tab has been designed into the middle of it to help align the upper and lower landing pod parts there to make sure that they're just perfectly aligned and fit together. So put that tab in there with a few spots of super glue, and then you go back through and just put a few more spots of super glue on top of that there in the middle where you haven't painted or necessarily put the runway markings in there, and you can see how that tab is going to help you align those upper and lower parts and get those just perfectly fit together. Now you'll see that the rest of the kit comes together pretty fast. In fact, I've already put the upper and lower mid-fuselage sections together and the upper lower head parts together as well too. I'm working back on the engine section. There's a cap that goes on the aft part of the engine housing there, so I'm putting that together right now. Everything should fit pretty well if you've gone through and cleaned up all those little print support nubs that are left over, and things should come together pretty quickly. Here I'm going to put the engine section now on the aft end of the mid-fuselage as well too. There are shapes designed in there, tabs and slots, that it really should only fit together one way, really helping you ensure that you're getting everything put together and everything is firmly locked into place and aligned. Now for me the fun part begins, the painting. I'm going to use this black Vallejo surface primer here in a black base painting technique. So I'm going to start, after I primed everything here, by putting down a layer of this Vallejo black paint to give everything an overall coat of black paint. And then I'll go back over that with the various shades of gray to give it the top coat then as well too. Now you can see here that I have left the flight pods off of the model for the moment, allowing me to get into areas there that I really wouldn't be able to access with the airbrush if I had the flight pods installed. I'm going over this in multiple passes using that black paint. It goes on best in very light coats, and this is going to take me probably 3 or 4 different coats to finally get this fully black based here and ready for the gray paint. In addition to the flight pods, I've also left the engine nacelles off of there, so I'm going to black base the engine nacelle separately. And I will give the engine nozzles a coat of a metallic steel right now as well too. I'm going to tap into some of my last remaining stock of Model Master paint and use their light ghost gray enamel as my base coat for the Talos here. Now I go through and I model this with little squigglies. You may have seen this in some other videos I've done. First, this is my second time going through doing that, and I'm just going through looking for areas where maybe I don't feel like I've got enough coverage to date. But it looks odd at this point. I know that, but it's going to turn out looking okay, trust me. So just going through doing the modeling kind of squiggly marbling process right now. Now I'm coming back through and I've really thinned up the paint. It's about 50-50 thinner to paint here at this point. And I am beginning to, I like to refer to as tinting the model. I'm just trying to now raise the black as well as the marbled gray to more of a gray overall paint. So just a lot of very, very light coats with thinned paints. And then I will come back with even thinner paint as my last few coats to go through and just even things out and get that overall tint up to where I like it. I want the marbling to still show through, and in fact on camera here it's really a lot more evident than it is in person, but I want to get this to where it's not just a monotone gray paint scheme, but it has some interest, it has some variation, it has some patchiness to it, and that's overall what I'm looking for. And with this very last few 2-3 coats of mostly paint thinner, I'm just trying to go through and get it to a point where I'm satisfied with that overall paint scheme. And I'm realizing now what I failed to do is show a gloss coat that I put down on the model. I use All-Clad's Aqua Gloss acrylic gloss coat on this. So now everything is glossed. I'm ready to go through and do some panel line detailing. I'm going to use Tamiya's panel line accent color. I'm going to use a dark gray on this because I really want to pull out those panel lines and all of those ribs and things like that in there. This is an enamel, so it goes down okay over the acrylic clear gloss coat I've got on there. And you can see how I just touch panel lines. In fact, I'm getting a little bit more on there than I normally would, but it's just because of the way I've got it here, trying to get the camera and everything in focus, that I'm being a little sloppier than normal. But just touch the panel lines. It will flow into those panel lines then and really do a great job popping those out. I'm also going to put it down into that rib structure as well too, because I want to show shadows down there in the depths of that additional detail that's in there. Overall, I'm going to let everything dry for probably 10 or 15 minutes. Again, this is an enamel, and then I'm going to come back and clean this off. And the way I'm going to do that is mostly I'm going to use some cotton swabs, some Q-tips here, and I'll just dampen them with a little bit of mineral spirits, enamel thinner in other words, and I will then go through and clean off areas of that. There it is right there, white spirit. I will go through and clean it off then from the highlights, from the areas where I don't want that enamel wash to be evident, but I'll leave it in the low areas in the panel lines, and it really is going to go a long way toward popping out the detail that's designed into this model. Now on to decaling, and I really enjoy this part of the modeling process here. I like the micro scale modeling system, so I'm going to start off by using their micro set solution to prep the surface of the model for the decals. I'm just using a damp paintbrush here, put a little bit down there on the surface. It helps just etch the surface a little bit, and then when the decal goes down on top of it here, it'll be under that decal and it'll help soften the decal and just assist in getting it settling down into any details there on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the decal with some very thin tweezers here. It helps me really get in there and manipulate that decal. I wetted my finger a little bit, and I will just slide that decal right off the backing paper. It's already been setting wet for a minute or two. The glue has had a chance to dissolve and release the decal itself from the backing paper, and it easily slides off. Once it's off the backing paper, I'm going to use that paintbrush again just to manipulate the position, try to get it into the final spot that I really wanted in there on the model, soak up a little bit of extra water. And once the decal is where I want it to be, I will use a clean cotton cloth then to just sort of roll over the top of the decal and try to get as much of the water and the setting solution out from underneath the decal as I possibly can. Now I will use microsol on top of the decal to help soften the decal and get it to really settle down into the details on the surface of the model. It also helps with silvering underneath the decal as well too. It softens it up, really gets it to settle into there, and helps prevent silvering on the decal as well too. I mentioned that there's a spot designed into the top of the fuselage of the Talos that accepts that Colonial Crest decal, and you're going to get both a white and a colored version of that decal. The white decal goes down first, which is what I'm working on right now, and that serves as a sort of an underlying white to really help pop out the yellow and the red that are in the colored part of that decal. If you just put that colored decal on top of the gray surface, it's going to mute those colors a little bit there. So the white underneath is really going to help those remain vibrant and pop out on the top of the fuselage. Back to the flight pods. You saw I put down the black Talos nameplate first. Now I'm going to go back with the white version of that decal and create that drop shadow effect by placing the white decal on top of the black, but just offsetting it slightly to the upper left. I have to figure out which way I'm going on this. The upper left then. And it gives that drop shadow effect on the name. The white decal is opaque enough that it covers up the black and really gives a super nice effect there that I think we've seen in the show with Galactica and the other nameplates there, where there's sort of a raised nameplate with the shadow effect on there. So this to me has been very effective in all the model kits I've done this on, and I really like the way it looks here as well. Back to the fuselage, let's get that colored decal for the Colonial Crest on there as well too. And I'm a little out of frame on this, I apologize for that, but I think you can see what's going on here. So this is where you really got to get in, you got to make sure that you're getting the color decal aligned with the white decal. It's not too difficult, but I got to get in here a little bit closer to get it properly aligned. But once it is, it's really going to pop out those yellows and reds that are on the colored part of the decal by having that white decal underneath it. And here it is then after one more gloss coat, and to me decals always make the kit come alive, and this is no exception here. I'm really liking the way that things look between the panel line washes and weathering I've done and the decals now that are installed on the kit. So the last thing, well the next to last thing at least, that we need to do is install the engine nacelles. And each one of these has an arrow that has been molded into the bottom of the nacelle where it won't be seen once the nacelle is assembled, but the arrows need to point up for the upper two nacelles and down for the lower two nacelles. So put some drops of super glue on the tabs that have been printed into the engine housing, and then look for the arrows that are going to point up once they're installed. Let me see, let's find one here. This is one here. Okay, so turn it around here. You can see that arrow is going to point up on the upper part of the engine housing once it is installed. And make sure that you've got those slots all cleaned out of any print support stubs in there, and these things are going to fit right on there without any trouble whatsoever. Let's find another one that has the arrow on it that's going to point up. I think I already had one set aside. And the reason I've done that is because these nacelles, the detail on them is not symmetric left to right on the nacelle itself. So I want to make sure that when you did get them installed that you saw the same detailing left to right on those nacelles when you look at the top two nacelles as well as when you look at the bottom two nacelles. Now that arrow is going to point, that's not the right one, this is the right one. That arrow is going to point down once I've got this on the lower part of the engine housing. So we'll just get that guy installed, and this guy is really going to start to come together now. Hey, I almost forgot. Don't you forget there's some engine nozzles that need to go on there as well too, and those should fit just right into the recesses on the backs of each one of those engine nacelles. I just put a drop of super glue in there, push them into place, no problem. I had already painted those metallic steel ahead of time, so they're ready to go once the nacelles have been installed. The instructions that come with the kit will show you that there are point defense guns that go on the leading and trailing edges of each one of the flight pods here, and I just thought I might show how I install those. I put just a very small drop of super glue using the head of a pin on each one of those pads that those point defense guns are going to be installed on, and then I've got some fine tweezers I use to lay those into place there. I'm coming up with that here in just a minute. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to lay those in position there, and the biggest challenge here really is just making sure that they are aligned when they're in position there, that they're uniformly pointing forward or off to the side or however it is that you want them to be pointed. I've got both elevated and stowed positions for these point defense guns. You can just choose whatever you think is look best, put some combination of both on there, whatever, it's your model. Once all the railguns are installed, and I'm just showing some beauty shots here to show the location of those various railguns, I did go through and I gave the entire model a satin clear coat just to tie everything together, then the paint job as well as any glue marks from putting the railguns on there. You can see I've got a variety of different positions for those railguns here on the bottom, and I've got the point defense weapons on top. Some I'm showing swiveling, some are elevated, some are still in the stowed position. You just do whatever you want to, whatever you think looks good and gives the model some interest. I mentioned that I challenged myself with designing and printing in scale Vipers as well as shuttlecraft for this model. You can see here how I've got them printed on some support stubs there. I think those are 1mm in diameter support stubs, and I have just painted the entire thing in white, and then I came back and I just airbrushed some light gray on the Vipers themselves. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip these off at the base of the support stubs, leaving those white support stubs in place. And when I install those then in the launch tubes that are designed into the side of the flight pods there, that white support stub is going to end up looking like the engine exhaust coming out of the back end of the Viper as it launches. Now, I don't know what you think about this. You may just want to forget it and walk away with it, not even mess with it, but I kind of like the effect that it gives coming out of those launch tubes. And I will cut those white supports at different lengths, making it look like the Vipers are in different phases of launching out of those tubes. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I like to display my models on attractive display bases, and one is included in the kit as well too. I've got it all painted up here and ready to go. A brass rod that is included with the kit fits into the display base and fits into a corresponding hole in the bottom of the kit as well too. So all the rail guns are installed, everything's ready to go. I'm ready to go ahead and mount it on that display base. I don't permanently mount these on the display bases because when I transport them, I like to take them off the display base, but overall, I think it really gives it an attractive base on which to display the model when you're finished. And that's a wrap on the build of the Talos 2 class Battlestar. I've really enjoyed doing this build and videotaping it for you here. The overall model measures about 6 inches in length, about 3 inches wide, and it makes a terrific display piece next to Mobius's same scale Battlestar Galactica and Battlestar Pegasus kits. I enjoy the challenge of designing all of the additional detail, the panel lines, the rib structure into this kit, as well as getting those Vipers and shuttlecraft designed and installed in the launch tubes and in the flight pods of this model kit. I really hope that you've enjoyed following along on this video here. Go over to the website at downscaledreplicas.com. You'll see more photos there as well as information about how to purchase the kit if you do have an interest. And in the meantime, I wish you a happy day and happy modeling.